The first game that you all voted me to take a look at with a new poll system is one of the biggest releases of the year. A little different for the channel, all things considered. A strange new place for it, like it's out of this world. Oh, aliens, right. Yay segues. XCOM 2 is the sequel to one of the best revamped franchises in the last 5 years, that being XCOM Enemy Unknown. This difficult tactical combat game now has a fresh coat of paint with a $59.99 price tag to boot, and it came out on February 4th to the PC, Mac, and Linux platforms. No consoles this time around, only PC Master Race supremacy. But does it live up to the hype surrounding it? Does the game push the genre to the next level? And secondly, did it need to? Can the same basic concept with slight improvements in various areas bring tactical fans the thrills that they are looking for? Or is it the same old song and dance, but even worse than before? That's what I'm here to answer. Let's start with the narrative elements here. This is 20 years after the events of the first game, and things haven't gone so well for the humans. The aliens are in control here. They are in power, acting as the controlling government as well. They've got a strong grip on the humans, and any sort of dissension is quickly squashed. Now, some humans are even okay with the aliens being in charge, or too afraid to be turned into galactic dust by speaking out. But luckily for humanity, there's still a resistance that's attempting to fight the aliens' absolute rule. And the commander from the first game is back, after being put out of commission for 20 years. It's up for the Resistance small team of scientists, engineers, and soldiers to put things back together. They'll need to gather support from other rebel groups around the world, and drive the alien race off the planet for good. And almost immediately, I like the changes here. The elements of guerrilla warfare to me makes much more sense here with the small tactical teams and strategies than they did in Enemy Unknown. In addition, the force behind the aliens seems to have a bit more bite behind them. They've got more dimensions in their reasoning, and they give you a little more reason to hate them. Sure, it's not literary gold at any point in this writing, and sci-fi fans, you've seen this type of plot before. There's one particular reveal in the game that does add some reasonable depth to the plot, and some good reasons why the aliens are particularly interested in keeping the peace and rule over the humans. I like this new angle, and it feels distinctly different from the original game, but still fits within that game's plot as well. Good side characters with reasonable personality differences help provide the context to the fight, and it makes you want to fight for them. I will say at times the plot really stretches to try to connect with the first game's plot. One element in particular that I won't spoil explains the new Viper units, an explanation that really felt like it was just tacked on there. The game really didn't need this either. It could have easily explained away the new race in another way, but it just sort of stood out like a sore thumb. That adds to a few oddities here and there, but thankfully, this does not break the immersion factor overall. However, on a positive note, I felt like the actual soldiers got a bit more character behind them this time around. A unit's personality comes through rather well. You can really tell the difference between a happy-go-lucky character versus a more goth character, thanks to the in-game voice acting lines. Those differences help you to make a connection there, and that's even if you don't construct the units via the character customizer. Overall, the narrative is a step up from the previous iteration, with more attention paid to immersive elements. It may still be simple, but it's still effective. But come on now, that's not why you're here. You're here for the gameplay, and that consists of several parts. But let's start with what the franchise is known for, the tactical combat. So combat-wise, not much has changed here, at least on the surface. Now keep in mind this, it's been a couple of years since I played the original XCOM Enemy Unknown, but if you enjoyed that game, you should be at home here, because it's really the same thing in the end, but with slight improvements. You'll bring a team of 4 to 6 soldiers of various skills and abilities to complete objectives of various types. These missions will vary, from taking out all aliens in a key town or structure, to rescuing civilians being slaughtered left and right. The game has a range of combat options, and players have to be very careful with their soldiers, as permadeath is a thing here. Now look, going into the XCOM formula wouldn't make too much sense here, given that a lot of people looking at the game are basing it off the first. If you want to know more, I'll leave some links in the description below to describe what the original games were like. But I want to focus on what's changed here, and how, in my opinion, it's improved. Now, the XCOM formula is well known at this point, but here's the basics of the combat mechanics. The game plays as a tactics game with RPG elements. Your units have 2 turns at a time, with any sort of primary attack ending your turn. Moving your units will cost a turn as well, and will allow you to go a certain distance with that one move. Now, you have secondary skills that can be used, and they range from one-off use items such as grenades to using drones to hack into remote devices. Now, the enemies won't know where you are at first. It's up for you to get into position to get the best jump on them without accidentally walking into their line of sight. Now, once you go loud, however, it's basically a straight-up tactical fight. Now, the key element here, though, is cover, as it dictates how easy you'll be able to hit and be hit by your enemies. So flanking and destruction of that cover becomes vastly important. In terms of the classes, you got the 4 main ones you start the game with once your soldiers get up to the appropriate rank: Grenadier, Sharpshooter, Specialist, and Ranger. Now, each of them are important, even if it doesn't look like it at first. That's because each of their skill trees here do have reasonable skills and differences between them. Now, you do eventually get more unit types such as Psi Operatives, which take a bit more effort to make, but end up being worth it. Nevertheless, there's good variety between the units here, and you can make some really powerful and specialized characters in the end. But unlike the last game, I don't think one class outshines the others in any way. They all have their purpose, and you'll need all of them to take out the enemies in the end. Now, within a class, you'll have 2 different skills you can choose at a rank up. And unlike the original game, each skill has a strength and doesn't necessarily outshine the other at the same level. It's easy to just go medic with the Specialist, for example, but if you actually go the other route on the tree, you'll notice that enemy turrets and robots are a lot easier to deal with. You can really customize against certain enemy types, and sometimes a certain build will be perfect for one mission, and disaster for the next. I will say that there does seem to be some overpowered skills at times here, although I will admit that part of that could be because of the success I had with certain builds. For example, Bladestorm, which attacks any enemy that comes into melee range of the Ranger, absolutely demolished some enemies at times, like literally killed 4 enemies in a row for me. But even with that said, its opposite skill, Implaceable, was still viable as well, giving a bonus move with a kill, allowing for great hit and run tactics. Good choices and fun choices as well on these skill trees here. Getting back to the main combat, the difficulty, even at the normal difficulty, can be brutal at times, and you should expect that. But it's not anywhere near the problems people are making it out to be on the Steam community forums. Enemies do a reasonable job of exposing weaknesses, but you'll eventually get the hang of how to best set up your squad and when to go after particular enemies. The game punishes you for bad choices, and it really should. Now, you can save state abuse the game if you want to keep people alive that much, and the game even keeps a few autosaves of the last turn and the start of the mission ready for you. But you'd also be cheating in that case, at least in my opinion. One of the first things that veterans of the series may notice is that there's a lot more missions with timed elements. This may cause some problems for veterans of the series, as one of the ways to get through some of the more difficult sections of Enemy Unknown was to cheese Overwatch and go very, very slowly. Now, this tactic is still viable in non-timed missions at times, but in these timed missions, you can't do that, and I think the change does make a better game. It gives you enough time to be a little bit flexible in battle, but there were times where I was escaping with 1 turn left. It added excitement to the game, it added some meat, and I liked it for that. The new enemy additions here do feel substantial. Enemies like the new Viper class changes things a little bit, as they can grab a character from afar, bind them, and take them out of battle while doing damage to them over time. Your soldiers will now need to rush over to save your comrade, and that may put them in the line of fire in the process. Some enemies from the original game return here, and overall, it's a really good mix-up of enemy types here. Different strategies are needed, and it's definitely one of the best places the game has improved, in my opinion. You'll need to adjust your strategies on the fly, and you won't be able to rely on one singular strategy to get rid of even a single enemy type, depending on what's on the field and what other enemies are flanking them. And there's more emphasis here on situational combat, with the different ammo types and enemy resistances. In particular, it was with the big enemies. A well-placed EMP bomb, for example, could shut down a gatekeeper dead in his tracks, and allow you to deal with the battlefield much more cleanly. On the other hand, big sectopods would be strongly weakened by a well-placed acid bomb to help counter that nasty armor of theirs. It made the resource gathering sections of the game feel much more important, and that it made a huge difference going into critical missions like these. There's not a lot of negatives here for the combat section for me, but there's two that stand out. Like the first game, a character can become panicked in the game depending on taking too much damage at once, for example. A panicked character will freak out, run around, and do actions randomly. Now, early on in the game, that's a seemingly huge issue to deal with, especially as your character can become more susceptible in certain cases. But even towards the middle of the game, it becomes a lot less of an issue. Sure, when aliens start messing with you specifically in your head, okay, fine. But I found myself in control of my squad a lot more often in this game than in the last. But what's the other one, you may ask? Well, the game is known for these accuracy percentages not reasonably translating to the success in missions. But from my perspective, I have absolutely no problem with that. You know the percentages going into the fight. Yes, it's strange that this character's getting this percentage to hit at that distance, but it makes it clear that's the percentage. There's a chance that the attack can miss. There are ways I can improve it with equipment or even with the right form of cover. No, to me, it's a problem that tries to explain bad luck or bad choices in combat. What's really pissing me off, though, is the new graze system. Now, this system seems to be some sort of side effect of the ability to dodge, but its ability to happen, along with the percentage of damage reduced, is never specified. Not knowing what exactly affects this is driving me insane, in contrast with the accuracy details. Even if I know I have a 100% chance to hit the enemy, this ability to graze enemies happens approximately 30% of the time at some points in the game, and I don't know what I can do to improve it. Now, in this version of the game, I felt there were a couple of more gotchas than in the original game that made save state loading a bit more appealing. A prime example being that you aren't given any sort of hint that going after a Muton with a melee attack will get your ass handed to you. Overall, the combat does make some great strides despite this. It adds a little bit more tactics into the already good set of mechanics and does what a lot of people would want out of a sequel. Refine the game, but not pull a Dragon Age 2. But let's flip over to the non-combat section of gameplay. Now, the driving force of the game is this Avatar project, which I won't go into the details of because spoilers. But from a high level, it's the win condition of the aliens. If they complete it, mankind is doomed. Well, more doomed than they were before. Now, there's a progression bar that will haunt you at the start of the game, and you'll have to fight the aliens' progression by taking out key installations or progressing in the story. Now, at first, it really does sort of put the pressure on, as you sit there figuring out how to quickly counter what they are doing. You'll counter it by determining which colonies or sections of the map to prioritize. Now, you establish communications and contacts within a region, and they will get you some resources on a timely basis and open up missions within it. On top of that, the game will randomly throw down various missions that will get you resources to buy upgrades and equipment as well. Now, this is all time-based, and you'll have to make the decision to avert your attention from a certain objective to face another big issue that just landed in your face. Now, the enemy won't make it easy for you either, as they'll attack colonies and even go after you with a UFO to try to take your ship down. Bad choices can rack up very fast, and wasting time is not something you want to do. And that's complemented by the upkeep of your ship. Now, unlike the original game, this ship has some limitations you have to work with in terms of upgrades. When you clear out a room of alien debris, for example, you'll have to choose what room you want to build in its place. Do you go for the proving grounds, hoping to get some better equipment early on? Or do you focus on trying to get the Scilab going right away and fight the aliens on their terms? Or do you need a little bit more contacts there, so you put a communications room there? You'll have to really consider each choice here. It's not always cut and dry, and you'll feel the effects of not having flexibility when you're trying to fight the Avatar project being completed, as you are sitting with maxed out communications or a lack of engineers. This section of the gameplay is where the big strides in the fight are actually made. You'll have to research to be able to get the better equipment and abilities for your squad, and then you've got to make the equipment in question. You'll then need to decide when to focus on getting more engineers to make more of the equipment and rooms that your scientists have figured out. There's a really good balance here, and sometimes rushing a particular element may get you a weapon you most definitely need for the next mission. That may be a lot less useful in the mission afterward. A player who's really using his resources wisely here and keeping track of things is rewarded, and I love that. This simulation and management portion of the game complements the combat nicely, as you definitely will feel the effects of it over time, especially with those particular enemies who were giving you so many problems before. Now they go down easily thanks to a new tech that you've developed. One thing though, the timed missions get really annoying at times in terms of the game completion, and stretched out this review in terms of its completion as well. You'll have to do at least some, and just when you think you're done, another one pops up. But other than that, pretty fantastic. Just don't try to beat this game in a weekend. Visually, the game is an improvement. Sure, it's no Witcher 3 or Star Wars Battlefront, but you see enough detail for your characters to be able to pick them out of a crowd. Well, assuming that you customize them a tiny bit. And you'll get a reasonable set of environments to fight in. Now, within the side missions, them being procedurally generated and all, you will of course run into a lot of similar assets after several missions in the same general area. But it's varied enough so that it doesn't feel that similar. But I love the customization portion of the game. You can now really get in depth with your soldiers, creating such famous characters as Gordon Freeman and Marcus Phoenix. You can name their weapons, give them code names, and make them the prettiest princess at the ball. This may be an overlooked addition to the game, but when a soldier can die rather easily, and you spent so much time customizing them, you feel the loss. They aren't just another grunt, they are your grunt. I'm glad so much effort was put into this, and I will say that those players who've made characters already for the community need to be given the salute. I'll put some more links to some good ones in the description below. Now, music-wise, I think the game does try its best to simulate the music from the original game, and comes up a tiny bit short. Michael McCann is the guy behind the music of the original game, and he did not make a return here. And while this music is competent, it's also just lacking that punch to it. I don't think a description can really do this justice in the end, so just listen to a few tracks from the original game, and then from this game, and make your own comparisons. Alright, I've said a lot of good things about this game, and not really a lot of bad. So it's a shoo-in for a day one purchase on my scale, right? Well, no actually. Don't get me wrong, the game is a great time and all, but there's something that holds it back. Well, some things, but it's those collection of things that really can sour the experience, sadly. See, like its predecessor, the game is launched with some technical problems, and the thing is, it's not just things like frame rate drops. It's a little bit weird to say the least. Now, for example, in-battle performance in terms of frame rate seems to be perfectly fine, especially at first. My specs are in the description below, but honestly, it worked perfectly fine even if there were a few hiccups, and an occasional killing of the executable. As of the time of this recording, the game can really hog your RAM, going up to 6 gigabytes at one point for me, as there seems to be a significant memory leak. People have reported sound driver problems, performance problems, it's all over the place. And that seems to be the base of the game, and I really haven't seen a great pattern in terms of specific hardware or OS used. Now note, if you're a Mac and Linux player, know that Feral did this port, and they're one of the best in the business at it, so you should be covered there. The game itself doesn't handle things going wrong very well. In fact, when I saw the performance take a dip was the fact that something in-game really had a problem in terms of something not loading correctly or maybe an animation not completing. But the biggest thing that really drove me insane, the loading times. You can see it all over the place, but it really starts to add up after a while. You'll first notice it when you're loading into a mission, as it tries to prepare you for what's to come. But then you'll notice it a little bit more when enemies are first seen on the map, that the game just pauses for a brief couple of moments, getting longer and longer when the game has been running for a while. And then you'll exit the mission, and see up to a minute of load times. It gets really old, really fast. And remember, this game was delayed. Honestly, it's something that would have stopped me from playing if I wasn't reviewing it. This is the strangest release I've seen in a while. It does work, and yet it doesn't. Also, glitches. Glitches left, glitches right, glitches up, and glitches down. We've got your graphical glitches, where character models go through the wall and through the floor. We've got your camera glitches, where the camera doesn't know where the hell it's supposed to go. And then we have this glitch, the special glitch, where the game has absolutely no idea what the hell is going on. Missing load elements, a bot that goes off to nowhere. Oh, and that one? Had to go back to an earlier save state on that one. The game does a piss poor job of recovering when something goes wrong, as I mentioned before. Something went wrong here for sure, but it really struggles to figure out what it's going to do about it. Basically, the game is an unoptimized mess. Knowing what happened with the original game, this will probably be resolved in a month or two time, but it really does make me question the last several sprints of the software development cycle. When you're adding Steam controller support, for example, which is nice and all, but it can be configurable for anyone right now, and your game is this unpolished, I do really have to question your focus in terms of the release. See, that's what it comes down to. XCOM 2 is a great continuation of the franchise, which could have been fantastic, and it may still be, that's the thing. A lot of my major complaints about the game are of a technical nature, something that Firaxis can fix. The combat is still great, still technical, and still punishing, even on lower difficulties. The improvements to customization are substantial, and really help the game in the long run, and of course it has mod support. The game has improved on almost every front, with two exceptions. The first is passable in terms of the music, but the technical issues knocked the game out of the day one purchase, no questions asked territory. Nevertheless, it's a game that strategy and technical combat fans will have to play, and it scores an 85 out of 100 for me, putting it in the buy now if you can reasonably afford and don't have a massive backlog category. But like all formal reviews on this channel, I try to take into account the fact that there is some subjective parts of the review. So I have an enhancer system, and if you want an explanation of that system, I'll put the link here. But the enhancers. Add 10 of the score when the significant technical issues in terms of the loading times and some of the frame rate issues in cutscenes are fixed. As I said in the overall score, the game's biggest flaw is its technical elements, and if those are fixed, it bumps the game up into a pick up right away category for tactical fans out there, and even those looking for a good time overall. It's just that in its current state, the bugs and the performance issues start to pile up very quickly and really started to drag the experience down. Now this was compounded by the fact that I had to do the review in a short amount of time, so keep that in mind. Take off 8 points if you're a patient gamer in terms of your purchases. Now with the first modifier out of the way, I have to make something clear. This game isn't revolutionizing anything in the genre, at all. And with mods on the way being developed, it's almost worthwhile to hold off and wait to see what happens. It's not a game that is bad in any sort of the description, but unlike games like Renowned Explorers or The Witcher 3, it doesn't push the genre anywhere to the next level in any one element. It's well done, just not drop what you're doing right now. Take off 15 points if you don't believe in the laws of probability. Look, the game can be brutal. If you want a game that cares about your well-being and your feelings, then XCOM 2 will shoot you in the head and dump you in the back alley. Yes, it's strange that being this close and personal to an enemy that I have that percentage to hit. If you don't like the fact that sometimes things won't go your way and you won't stoop to reloading over and over again, XCOM 2 is not the game for you. At all. Even if you have 90% to hit that enemy, guess what? There's still 10% of a chance for you to miss. Get over it. Also, save state loading is cheating. I said it. Wanna fight me over it? As an aspiring YouTuber, anyone who's made it this far into the video, I really do appreciate the time and effort you put in to watching the video, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And knowing that, know that your feedback is critical for me to improve. So if there's something in this review you liked or disliked, please let me know with hitting that like or dislike button and sharing your comments in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, Commander, and keep on gaming. And if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go yell at getting another Graze hit again, because I feel like a little frustration is in order. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button in the middle of the screen. The last video I did will be in the top left, and a related video to this will be in the top right. I do have a Twitter handle at the bottom left, and a Facebook page at the bottom right. And of course, you can always subscribe to the Google Plus portion. Anyway, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.